If you're not willing to come together to create that code, that guild, right, to protect, invest, and have equity in each other, there's nothing you can do outside of that because you can't create harmony. Balance is toxic, and we keep trying to find balance. You understand me? Balance comes from this place of control, management, right? Well, harmony is finding how these unequal systems can work together.
Welcome to another episode of the Risk Takers podcast presented by HYM Enterprises. I'm your host, Harold Matos. This is a show where we'll feature esteemed business leaders as they provide us with insights into their business and personal journey. Please like, share, and subscribe for a weekly dose of your motivation and inspiration. Today I have a co-host with me. He goes by the name of Brian Keith Franklin. You might know him from his entertainment company, Golf Course Leisure, aka GCL.
What's up? What's up? How you doing for the world? Love to be here. This is gonna be a great interview. I'm ready. It's like football already. Let's go.
All right, today's guest is 19 Keys, a visionary thought leader, high-level entrepreneur, one of the leading voices in the space of consciousness and wealth building. Known for his high electrifying message and sharp style, 19 Keys bridges tech, culture, and legacy for the next generation. My brother, what's going on?
Blessed to be here with you two good brothers, man. I appreciate y'all energy already.
For sure, man. Let's dive into it, man. So, what made your upbringing fuel an above average mindset?
I seen it in real time. I seen black men with money and power growing up. You know what I'm saying? And I grew up in an environment in Oakland, California, where, we would have Monday night meetings where there was men's training, right? And I was going to that since I was in elementary school, right? To where, it was very rigid all the way up until the point where we had to sit in a meeting for hours. You got to think as a young child, you don't want to be hearing none of that shit. You understand me? Talking about consciousness and the world and all these devils and stuff they doing, man. I probably want to go play with the Game Boy or something at that time. But if you move, you got to sit there straight like this the whole time. And if you move, somebody might come in the back of your head and just smack you like that. You feel me? And so I definitely hated anybody who would have done that to this day. I still want my retribution. But growing up in an environment, it taught you discipline, number one, right? We would do militant drilling to where, you know, you would focus on your peripheral vision, right? Instead of looking around. So it will also teach you focus. I would be in the meetings where men were doing business, right? And when men would mess up with business, they would get admonished in front of everybody, in front of the full circle, right? And we were taught about the importance of economics and the importance of ownership and the importance of power, right? So when I grew up, although I did see the masculine side of men be both intellectual, right? But also be very capable of extreme violence, right? And so I seen what one could consider a balance in that particular atmosphere, and also seeing men with power that ruled, but also had corruption and why they failed, right? And so for me, it was always, thinking about environment as being stronger than nature. You realize that these are things that shaped me early on that most people they gotta read about in a book. You know what I'm saying? You see the movie Malcolm X and you see a black man with power for the first time. Or your local drug dealer or gangster in your neighborhood is somebody that you see with power. It wasn't somebody that you seen as a businessman with power. You understand me? It wasn't you riding down the street in an all-black motorcade and even the police stopping for y'all. That's not an environment most people grow up in. It's something that they see. But I was always taught, and even in Islam, we're taught that the pen is mightier than the sword. You understand me? We're taught that, the mind of a scholar, right, is more powerful than, the feats of a warrior. So for me, being a man and utilizing my mind was always the goal in the first place. It was never a money goal, right? It was always this mental goal of like, how do I become great up here?
Okay. Let me ask you a question. For some of the people who, I mean, everybody knows you're big, you're a huge name. But I wanted to ask the question, what's the story behind your one of a kind name? Real quick for those who don't know.
So the name 19 Keys is a journey, man. I first developed the name. I got some insights. I remember my brother had introduced me to some literature that I found that had a quote in it. And it said that there's 17 million original people and there's 2 million Indians. And this quote was by a man named Matos Muhammad. He is who is you consider the founder of the Nation of Islam. He's the one who taught the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. And of course, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad is the one who founded the Nation of Islam in North America and taught Malcolm X and Farrakhan and so on and so forth. But the quote 17 million original men and 2 million Indians represented the 17 million original people, black people in America at that time, right? And then including the Native American population. But he said there's 17 million rusty locks and there's 17 million well-oiled keys to unlocking those rusty lock minds. And the interpretation that I take from that is that, you know, the keys are interchangeable for knowledge or enlightenment, right? That can be utilized so that the people can never be oppressed again. Because once you have enlightenment, you can never be fooled. I'm not talking about just a little bit of information, not talking about some knowledge. I'm talking about enlightenment. That's the activation of light and wisdom in one's mind where it becomes who or who she is, right? And so there has to be a point in time where our people can never be fooled again. That we know ourselves, we know our enemy, we know our world, we know our power. And so I always looked at it as seeing from a practical level that there's a lot of young men and women that don't have somebody to help unlock that true self, right? This is why so many people catch cases. We eat wrong, we think wrong, we live wrong because we don't have keys in our life. And I said, what if I can become that keys in Black America? And so I went on that journey and start calling myself 19 Keys as a representation of the 19 Keys, right? In the way that I utilize my knowledge and my mind to help unlock others.
Your journey and how you've, just that rocket fuel, that just how you've been moving, is definitely unlocked a lot of minds, even my own, in that era where we were just online, just soaking up so much information. So you definitely, it's just on brand. The naming matches the calling. My next question for you would be, what's one thing people assumed about you that is totally wrong, but it's too funny to correct? Like, you know what? I don't even want to waste my time answering that. Like, what's the thing?
Oh, you know what I would say? That I'm a Mason.
That's your
I'm,
what?
that I'm Masonic. That I'm somehow part of the Masons.
Yeah.
And I find it funny because at the time when I first heard it, but I think it's just one of those things that anytime any black man becomes successful, you have to figure out a reason why. It can't be by their own merit, can't be by their abilities. I couldn't have learned how to brand and market and sell and design. I couldn't have actually read books and strategized and created campaigns and networked across the planet Earth. I couldn't just, developed into a great communicator and speaker on my own independent studies. You're right. I couldn't have just done all these things. It had to be something behind it. So I would see people but it'd be funny because they breakdowns and they reasons why it never made sense. It might be a star turned a certain way. You know what I mean? And at the time I really didn't know shit about the Masons. We was always taught growing up as a Muslim that the Masons are my sons because they only have 33 degrees of knowledge when we're taught to have 360 degrees. Right. So I never thought of Mason as something that is as a hierarchy. I thought it was always something lower. So for me, that's not even aspirational, even though, and shout out to everybody that are a part of that. And, there's different levels and degrees in which people go by it. But no, it's never been something it never been something that makes sense to attach to my name. You understand me? But these internet streets, man, they come up with all kind of conspiracies. I try to stay out of some of them. And recently I haven't been seeing a lot, but I just think that once you want to find something, you want to look for something, it could be the way I turn my glass. You know what I'm saying? Like they go figure out a reason why, how that has to be connected to some right order that exists 1600 years ago and how 19 Keys is the reincarnation of, some bullshit. So I think the internet, once you have to respect it to a certain degree because it does represent that you become an idea for people, right? And so once people see you as an idea instead of a human being, they stop appreciating what you do, right? Because they're not thinking of, damn, what does 19 Keys have to do every single day to show up in the world? Right? What do I have? What are the things that I have to learn? What are the problems I have to go through? What are the challenges that I have to deal with? Right? I have to learn and do all the things that a common man has to do. Plus, I have to show up consistently as myself, dealing with family issues, dealing with personal issues. But then just the genius it takes as a black man in America to build a global platform itself should always be honored and respected. And if I ever do something wrong, you can always reach out to me. You understand me in some capacity as long as it ain't disrespectful.
That part.
Exactly. Facts. Right.
All right, man. So you speak a lot about ownership and generational wealth. What's a business move you made that taught you $1 million lesson the hard way?
Picking the wrong business partners, Picking the wrong business partners. There's a term now I got called red flagging. So in red flagging, you think about everything that could go wrong and you develop a system just in case. So that when it does happen, you're ready to pivot and you can handle that challenge and nothing goes bad. But I think that I was naive, you understand me, in picking partners and I should have vetted them better. Right. And so I was working with a brother in 2018 to like 2019, 2020, and when you're young and you come in up, and for me, it was always about breaking rules. You understand me? But breaking rules in the sense of looking at white America and saying that, listen, I'm not going to get my way in their structure. Let me figure out another way to do it. Let me figure out an alternative. So you're never going to go the common route. I'm not going to go through the school education. I'm not going through the boule gatekeepers. I'm going to do it my way. So when we started teaching financial literacy, because I wanted to one of the, I would say, forefathers of this movement. You understand me? Even when it came to stocks, I ain't the best option trader in the world at all, but I was one of the ones that helped introduce it because when I first heard of it, it made sense. When it comes to cryptocurrency, AI, blockchain, right? Nobody has spread the gospel of that to our people greater than myself. And I mean globally at a high level, right? But these are always things that I would be criticized about because they like, you supposed to just talk about consciousness. They want to always fit you in these boxes, right? So when I found me a business partner that I felt like could be the one that allowed me to be able to let me build out the audience, let me build out the platform, let me focus on the consciousness. And now we also have somebody that can help us get money, right, on the back end. And so I should have vetted and think about more of this person's reputation. You understand me? What are the red flags? Because I think that the worst thing you can do in business is pick the worst partner. You understand me? And that did cost me millions of dollars. You understand me? And he cost a lot of other people a lot of money. And so if it would have went right on hindsight, it would have made us all hundreds of millions of dollars. But greed is a very dangerous thing. And you want to build trust-based loyalty relationships, right? But unfortunately, it's not a bad thing. And I will say this as a caveat, especially as black men and black women, we don't get enough grace to fail, right? Like failure in entrepreneurship is rites of passage. That's what it is. Because white founders will get venture capital for an idea, and then get tens of millions, hundreds of millions of dollars for an idea to fail forward. And after you fail and you crash out that money, guess what you got now? You got the experience to know what not to do. So I don't look at those as bad things per se, but they are lessons that now I can teach another person. When you're doing something, pick the right partner.
So, you got a show on YouTube for the ones that are not aware. You got a show on YouTube called High Level Conversations. So you got less than 100 episodes, but you're picking about almost at 100 million views. Which episode felt like the biggest risk to drop? Like, damn, this is going to shake the system.
I would say the most reluctant episode I did was Robert F. Kennedy, because it's political. You understand me? And it's a white man. And I just knew that I was going to have to go in there, no fluff, and I have to challenge him in order for this to make sense, right? And it was at the time when he was running for president, and I didn't want this to be regular, so we even did a hike. I don't know if people made it to that part of the episode where we even went on a hike so I can ask even additional questions. But I remember challenging him about his elite status. You understand me? And having a conversation about Israel on this platform. I mean, on the platform. And that episode ended up getting widely shadow banned. But they did also reference that episode a lot in like Wall Street Journal and CNN and other different articles and things of that nature because he talked about things with me that he didn't speak on any other platform. And I challenged him in ways that nobody else had, right? But I just remember being reluctant putting that episode out. You understand me? Just thinking about, number one, the consequences of when you start doing political things, right? In the essence of they start shadow banning your channel, right? I knew that I'm not gonna fluff around his ass.
Today's episode is sponsored by Event Care Consulting Group, where healthcare meets legal hustle. If you're in a personal injury and need a smarter system to scale, Event Care is your go-to consulting team.
And so I didn't know how people were going to receive it, our people and others. But when we put it out, people actually loved it. You understand me? Like they loved his answers. They loved my questions. They loved the fact that we was able to flesh out a full conversation and they had never seen somebody that's this black Muslim with his own platform, right? Have political candidates. And some people didn't like, I'm sure, the fact that Robert F. Kennedy essentially had to come on my platform, right, and speak to me in the first place. And so I think it represented this paradigm in media to where we represent our own power, like we're independent. Like and it was also, I think a lot of people didn't like it because it wasn't about the fact that he didn't show up. It was about who wouldn't show up. Because I'm sure we wouldn't have got Kamala or Kamala. You understand me? But it was easy to get a Robert F. Kennedy, a Cornel West. I think we could have even gotten a Donald Trump if we tried. You understand me? And I know this from some inside sources, but I don't think we could have got Kamala, right? I think I can go get me a Republican president faster than I can get Obama, right? It's just one of those things. That's the boule. You feel me? So when we put out episodes like that, it's always interesting because it feels more of a necessity than a want.
So I have a question. Speaking in thought of like industry insight and just all that experience that you have, what's one mindset shift that every entrepreneur needs as of yesterday? Okay, as of yesterday to operate at a high level.
I would say, number one, instead of thinking about how much harder you can work, think about how much clearer you can think, right? Thinking better is the key of our time. We have agentic AI. Agentic AI right now, right? Meaning that you can utilize that in your business to go look at all your emails, reply to them, then tell the AI to give me the ones that matter the most. You understand me? If there's any meetings on my schedule, automatically put those on my Google Calendar and send me a notification when I'm ready. And then also, automatically go to my Zoom link and start up my Zoom so that as soon as I walk in the room, it's ready at 12 o'clock. All of that required you to actually go do the work, to go, it required time or it required an assistant to get those things done. There's going to be so much that the entrepreneur gets to offload to the machine, right? And so the entrepreneur today has to change the way they go about thinking about productivity in their day, right? Because now I call it the billionaire brain. The billionaire brain is essentially a billionaire doesn't have to think about none of the things that the average person does, right? You're not thinking about checking no mail. You're not thinking about balancing a checkbook. You're not thinking about replying to all of these mundane things that we taught as human beings and as adults that we must learn that we spend so much cognition on. We ain't got none of that shit matter, right? Even when we talk about marketing and branding a product, there people still putting out like static pictures and telling people what it is instead of creating a connection. You understand me? People care about the entrepreneurship, the entrepreneur they can connect with. Show me how you're doing it, not just what you're doing. I want to know behind the scenes. I want to know your journey, right? You have to focus on world building, which require creativity, imagination, and better thinking. Because the entrepreneur needs to be able to sit down. He needs to have a clear mind. He needs to be able to synthesize data and insights so that you can get things out of it that nobody else can. Everybody has AI, but how you use it is the differentiator, right? Anybody can start a product. You understand me? But how you get people to connect to that product? Because if I'm selling this product, same packaging as somebody else, and another person is selling it, why would they come to me? But the world has be we democratized access and all those things. The only reason they will come is because, listen, they are more connected to my story than they are yours, right? If I say I'm selling Supermind and Bill Gates selling Supermind coffee, mushroom coffee, you know what? I'm going with Keys. I don't like Bill Gates. You know what I'm saying? It's a simple sell. At first, that wasn't it. In the 90s, early 2000s, I'm going Bill Gates. I ain't going with Keys selling. I don't know him like that. You know what I'm saying? But the associations, the feelings, the connections that are connected to it. Why? Because you're now buying into your values. And you believe your values are more aligned with 19 Keys than Bill Gates. So as an entrepreneur today, it's not about how much work you can do. It's not about being busy anymore. None of that matters, right? It's about being able to think better, to give orders to the machine. And that requires you to be imaginative. That requires you to have higher cognitive function, right? That requires you to focus on wellness as a strategy to do better in business because the clearer your thoughts, the greater your insights. So now you thought of something that nobody else could because you gave yourself the time, which is that freedom time, that capacity, right, to be able to execute on things that nobody else could. When I started doing high level conversations, I really sat down and meditated on it. I didn't want to compete with other podcasts. I don't compete with other podcasts. You understand me? I wanted to create a show that compete with networks. If I'm gonna create one that's 2 to 3 hours, so what do we do? You see our thumbnails, those are movie posters. Right before episode comes out, well, we have a commercial that's a trailer. You understand me? When you're watching it, we have a sound score. You hear sound on the back end of it, whether it's audio, whether it's visual, because it's going to connect to you emotionally. Right? Then we throw on B-roll on there because it's resetting the attention span because 2020 average attention span was 9 seconds. A goldfish is 8 seconds. Right? Then we throw in overlay text so that you're reading something as well. So therefore it's hitting stimuli on multiple different levels. So if I didn't sit down and think about those things, it wasn't just about whether I can execute, create a podcast. No, of course that's available to me. But how we do it matters more. So it's your creative intelligence that's more important than your analytical intelligence, more important than you just being able to execute and work hard today.
So 19 keys. I have a question for you, and this is for the mindset of the person who's mentally free, who you basically described, right? These black leaders in our community. What's a key to real unity among emerging black leaders? So people who are already at that mind state but coming together.
It's the leaders that need to sit down with each other, not the tribes, right? It's a very simple thing. There's a model in Japan called the Kiratsu, right? The Kiratsu is like when all of these companies come together, they invest in each other. They typically have different verticals that they work in, so it's non-competitive. But they invest in each other and they protect each other, right? In Japan, they got like Mitsubishi and all these other companies that work. So therefore, anything that happens, whether it's a hostile takeover, whether it's economic collapse, they make sure, right, that they're protected inside this system. And it's what we call harmony capitalism. Harmony capitalism is not just about building a business to scale it out. It's about building things that focus on sustainability. It decreases the churn rate of employees because it is about creating something that is a loyalty-based system. How do we develop and optimize this thing to where everybody is loyal to the thing that we're building? Right? And it's a completely different mindset than the capitalistic mindset that forces us to be in competition with each other. So as men, I think when we come together and then we sit down and we work out a system, right, to where everybody can fit in that system. If I say, listen, you got a product, I got a podcast. You got a supply chain. You understand me? You got the people on the ground, right? Those are four different systems coming together to work with each other. Maybe we get 4 to 5% equity. We also have a code in a guild that everybody must agree to. And if you do anything outside of that, you get kicked out of it. There has to be consequence and punishment for going against the code of that system. If you're not willing to come together to create that code, that guild, right, to protect, invest, and have equity in each other, there's nothing you can do outside of that because you can't create harmony. Balance is toxic, and we keep trying to find balance. You understand me? It's balance comes from this place of control, management, right? Well, harmony is finding how these unequal systems can work together, right? Because I might have a greater platform than somebody. Doesn't mean I wouldn't work with them in harmony, but that doesn't mean I'm gonna work with you as an equal, right? It's unequal parts coming together, right? And that matters. So therefore, listen, you got an ego because you know that my platform is bigger. So now you feel like I'm thinking of myself a certain way. That should not matter. You should want me to think of myself big because as long as I win, you win, right? And so if we can change our value systems, right, to being the most significant, which is filling this gap of insecurity, right, to being the one who contributes to being a part of a community, it changes the way we focus on each other. So I look at you brothers and I say, man, Damien, how can I add the value to what you guys are doing? How can I have a significant impact? Versus I come to you and say, man, I'm 19 keys. What y'all can do for me? You understand? Now it's gonna trigger your ego. You understand me? I'm coming in to figure out how we fit in this thing of harmony, right? Dr. Wesley Muhammad, my brother, man, he called it Black God Protocol. I have something Or I can do something you can't do. You can do something that I can't do. And we bow down to each other. We bow down because this is how we make these things work, right? These are different frequencies working in harmony with each other. You understand me? That's how a symphony works. But when you see a band on the stage, you think that if the drummer is mad that there's a lead singer and he's not getting as much love, then he's going to get out of that band, right? Because now he wants balance. Oh, they need to see me as much as they see you. So now he like Nick Cannon on drumline. Right? Ain't nobody asked you to do no solo right now. Relax. That was a good analogy of having harmony instead. It's like, no, we all work equally to make this thing happen. There has to be somebody in the front, has to be somebody on the side, has to be somebody in the back. You understand me? And together these parts work in harmony so that we are all successful. Maybe to not equal degrees, right? But we're all successful in the fact that we're creating something that is sustainable and successful.
What's silently destroying every day in America's mind and body? Like the thing that we don't realize is just wrecking havoc.
Smile.
Like, listen, this thing is like, hey, listen, you know this is killing us all.
Yeah, the one thing that's killing us every single day is this phone. Every single day. It's the most dangerous tool and the most powerful tool. It's the most enslaving and the most liberating tool on the planet Earth. So the Department of Defense called cognitive security or cognitive warfare, right? A threat to society. Cognitive warfare, there was this study that was done on Reddit users to where somebody had employed an AI to see if it can influence and manipulate Reddit users. And what they found out that it was able to influence them politically, right? It was able to influence them in the ideas of relationships, right? It was able to influence ideologies. And the thing is that it was almost 50 to 100% more influential than if a human being had tried. And these are just algorithms, right? So they're employing these bots, and these bots are literally having conversations with people, but people don't know that these are bots, right? And so they're thinking that these are their ideas. Whole time you thinking, oh, you just found out about something because you was on the internet, not knowing that it's been taking you down a rabbit hole. And what it's doing is we have something they call neuroplasticity. It's the ability of our brain to change, right? So we can change our minds quite literally. We can learn new things, right? So we can break apart neurons that have certain thoughts patterns, and then we can restructure those with new thoughts. And that's when we form new habits. Well, they learn to use that against us. They're using our own neuroplasticity against us. So now what they're doing is if they can make you change the way you think, right? And they rewire your brain to where it becomes a permanent identity that you're now fighting to protect. It's very dangerous because the internet used to just be something that we was able to read and write on, that we interacted with. Now the internet is talking back to us.
Hmm.
The internet has convinced, and I say the internet, but let's say AI, it's already convinced the kid to commit suicide. It's turned people into different political parties. It's got people to get rid of their religions. It's got people to change sexual identities. You understand me? It gets people to gamble every single day. Life savings, right? And make dumb decisions all for the what? The algorithm. So cognitive security is number one. Your mental hygiene, right? Digital literacy is key right now. Understanding the way these things operate and work. Because if not, you got your child on the internet when it's really the internet that has your child.
Mm, my dog. Talking to the boys with children. Yeah, now we gotta. If we have more than 30 minutes, like I said, we will be going back and forth about certain stuff. But and even the movies that I tell people that even if the movies are fiction, they still tell you a lot of what's going on or what's about to happen and things of that nature. So,
But the media is our number one opportunity to be able to change our narratives and our imagination, right? It's our greatest threat and our greatest weapon as well. Because unfortunately, most of our identities have been programmed through Hollywood. If we didn't see it, you don't see it in reality. So if you go look at the main identities that you've seen in the movies over time, you also see that in reality. The difference is our generation, millennials, boomers, all of that, grew up on Hollywood driven narratives. The younger generation grew up on social media driven narratives. So there's two schismas of identities that's being developed. One was all about liquor and partying. You understand me? These other ones, they growing up on vapes, right, and scrolling. You understand me? In these chat rooms. So they're developing their identity retrofitted to what they're seeing in reality. And so Hollywood did not write the script of the identity for Gen Z. Social media is. The influencer is. So they know how powerful that is. So they must try to figure out how to get control. And that's why they're employing these bots. And so it's a very tactical, psychological operation to try to control the mind of a generation, but it's also how to control the mind of the masses.
You have a worldwide tour going on right now. Where could fans tap in and what kind of vibe should they expect when they pull up?
Man, you can always go to 19keys.com/tour. You know, it's a Renaissance experience. Where you brothers from?
Florida, South Florida.
So in Overton, Miami, there was a Renaissance that happened. You understand me? Where there was thriving blacks, right? To where we was getting money. There was a cultural renaissance. It first started, of course, in Harlem, right? There was a deep intellectual network that happened that was intentional behind the scenes of how to get us to go into this new identity of men and women, right? And there was this media called the Crisis Magazine. W.E.B. Du Bois started it. It detailed all of our problems and issues that happened, right? And then they went to all of the HBCUs because most of the time the revolution, right, starts on the campuses. So you want to get the young minds, and they're the ones who push most of the activism. So what happened is jazz was born out of this, right? There was a lot of job surplus and black people were thriving during this time, right? In Virginia, Overton, Atlanta, Oakland, you name it, right? DC, we was really living good. So the question becomes what happens? It's when you get redlining, right? And you get all the other different things the devil's always trying to do to try to stop us. But to that point, the reason I called this thing the Renaissance, right, is because it was always about a rebirth, right? Oftentimes we think about a revolution. What can we do to disrupt the status quo, right? But a renaissance is what can we rebirth that we've once done before, right? We've always been great entrepreneurs, innovators, inventors, etc. The problem is that we've never been left to our own devices, and we've always been disrupted when we try to build something. The only man that was able to do it in America, uninterrupted to a point, was the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. He built an empire that only passed after he died because his son dismantled it. Right? And so when I think about that, I think that black people in America have an identity as entrepreneurs, as inventors, as scholars, as intellectuals. We've been robbed of that identity because hip hop is over popularized and overrepresented in what we call culture. But that's not our true culture, it's just an aspect of it. So when I go through these cities, it's about more so having a rebirth and also pointing us into the direction of what we need to be doing now, how we need to build wealth for the future. What does the new man or woman looks like, right? What does raising a family look like in the future? When we got all this AI technology, agentic technology, right? So not is it only connecting us to having clarity about the future, but also reframing our narrative of the past, right? I think that that's very important. So now we have a whole perspective on how to move forward. So we're planning on having different aspects of that be immersive. You understand me? It's supposed to be experiential. We're having these conversations, we're having roundtables, we're doing cognitive training during this time to make sure that your mind is ready. We're going to be introducing you to the tools that you're needed. We have some programs that we're working on the back end because we're working to do a whole wellness renaissance as well. Because you can't claim to be a successful black man if you're not physically and mentally fit. I ain't asking you about your money. If you ain't physically and mentally fit, we can't take you in the future with us. It's point blank, period. You understand me? Because you have to be ready. Otherwise, when I talk to y'all about cognitive security, the flip side of that, those who are most susceptible, those who are poor, those who are stressed, have anxiety, depression, you understand me? Those are the ones easiest to manipulate. So that means that I can't trust you because your well-being is not high enough to have a mental defense to where I don't know if they manipulating your mind to get you to hate me. You understand me? So now the devil is able to use you. You on social media arguing, you turned into the greatest mascot for MAGA all of a sudden. It's like that's weird. You feel me? So you think that this is your identity, not knowing you being manipulated because that's how a psyop works.
Yeah, brothers
So
become
I
bots.
only want to be around conscious individuals. And I mean people with consciousness and higher levels of thinking and or at least seeking that. So it's we can get information all day on the internet. But when do we have spaces of rebirth, spaces of revival, spaces that represent that thought that we have at night of what we want to see in the world? So I want y'all to come in suited and booted. I want y'all to come in looking good because this is a representation of us moving forward, finally having that moment to where it's the 30-year anniversary of the Million Man March. Do we have that for our generation yet? No. We don't know what it's like to even have that feeling of mass unity.